I've had multiple career breaks, and in each of these breaks, Shrikant, what happened was that it was my curiosity and learning mindset that would come in. A big shift was moving from short term thinking on what's going to happen to my career to a long term thinking that, yes, I will make it. So, no matter what comes my way, whether it's going to be straight or a curvy path, but I knew that I will make it. I have a bag full of stories, but let me take on two. So, the first one is of a young girl. She was in her late 20s and the first time earner from her village. I think a career is not just about money, it's about the experiences that you've gathered through your life.
Not everything that matters needs to be loud. Some conversations help you pause, some help you see differently, and some stay with you long after they end. Welcome to Inspire Someone Today, my dear listeners, a space for honest conversations about life, work, and the choices that shape who we become. No quick fixes, no borrowed certainty, just real stories, thoughtful reflection, and the quiet courage to live with intention. This is Inspire Someone Today, where conversations are human, reflective, and meant to stay with you. Listeners of Inspire Someone Today, welcome back for yet another episode of this wonderful series that we've been running, the Portfolio series. In this episode, we move into something even more personal, the connection between money, confidence, career choices, and the life we quietly build over time. It's an absolute joy to have Anu Seth, financial coach, co-founder of Pay It Forward, the chairwoman of CII, Indian Women Network Karnataka, for a deeply honest conversation on financial agency, leadership, life transitions, and what it really means to build confidence, just not wealth. It's an absolute joy, Anu, to have you grace this episode of Inspire Someone Today.
Thank you so much, Shrikant. And it's indeed an honor to be on Inspire Someone Today. It's really the space to look out for. I think inspiration and role modeling is very close to my heart. So thank you for having me.
So we'll kick right in the portfolio series segment. And I was intrigued with this thought that I read about you, where it said that you are an accidental investor. We'll start from there.
Okay.
Why do you call yourself an accidental investor, and what actually happened there?
It's very interesting that you picked that as the first question. Thank you so much. So, interestingly, finance was never part of my career plan when I started. I was completely enamored by technology. And I began my career with software and some leading technology firms. Investing entered my life quite accidentally, more through my own curiosity, confusion, and honestly, the realization that even educated professionals like me often don't fully understand money. And somewhere along the way, I realized that if so many capable people like me feel intimidated by money, maybe the problem wasn't people. Maybe the conversation around finance itself was unnecessarily, complicated. So, without this grand roadmap, I wasn't someone who grew up with reading market reports or planning a career in investing. I was simply trying to understand my own financial decisions better. And that's the realization that eventually led to my organization Pay It Forward. And I call myself an accidental investor.
When did you actually kind of realize that earning money and understanding about money are two different set of things?
Honestly, I come from a very humble background. And I actually grew up being very money conscious, budgeting, saving, being careful with what you're going to spend, and couple that with a convent education of always giving and being like, sharing whatever you have. These were some habits which were deeply ingrained. So I would call myself financially responsible. It's only, later on I realized there's a big difference between being money conscious and actually understanding, how money grows or having money confidence. So I genuinely believed that, hard work would get me there, getting a good salary or being in a good job would actually make wealth for me. I would save diligently. I would take care of safety and put some money away in fixed deposits and wanted to be financially secure. It's only when compounding really hit me. It's something that we study in school in grade 7 or 8, but both emotionally and let's say even practically, compounding was really a black box. And it was in my late 20s that it really hit me that, one needs to actually think about money growth as well. Though I actually got into that much later.
It's a very interesting segue that you make. Personally, for you, from Jabalpur to Bangalore, from being a techie, a software engineer to now what you are doing. How did those transitions play out?
Yeah, so it was very interesting. I've had multiple career breaks, and in each of these breaks, Shrikant, what happened was that it was my curiosity and learning mindset that would come in. And I would go around picking whatever came my way, whether it was doing a new thing, take up a challenge and apply whatever skills I had. There were times when, once we were posted in Bihar, and I had moved from Bangalore to Bihar, and that environment did not have computers at all. I took up the challenge and I started coaching the ladies around me and other neighborhood children on how to use basic computers. This is internet had just come in, and people were. I was very surprised that there could be a space where they're not thinking about this as a future. So whether it was teaching, whether it was learning, in whichever way, I would just pick up projects and go along. And only in hindsight, I realized that, somewhere that led to a lot of growth in, for me, more as a personal growth and a personal development there. A big shift was moving from short term thinking on what's going to happen to my career to a long term thinking that, yes, I will make it. So, whatever, no matter what comes my way, whether it's going to be straight or a curvy path, but I knew that I will make it.
And that was fueled by?
My own ambition. When you come from a small town, you have this drive in you, or as I reflect back, see, both my mother and mother-in-law were working. There were very few women who were working there, so I had brilliant role models and a very supportive spouse who insisted that I do something. And couple that with my own drive of being very independent and wanting to be financially independent, I constantly took up work which was different, whether it aligned in a software career or not. I just kept trying different things and learning. So I used every gap as a learning opportunity. And when you put it all together, there was a lot of curiosity and learning that fell in place.
I noticed, and even during our conversations you mentioned a lot about learning and curiosity, the emphasis on learning, the emphasis on staying curious. How did you kind of develop this habit of staying curious? And what are some of those things that you do to remain curious even to this day?
I think it's probably something which got trained early in life. We did not grow up with gadgets. We really grew up amidst plants and animals and an open place. And we traveled multiple places. Traveling and changing homes does this to you. So I've moved home some 16 times. And we've traveled within India and across right from as a childhood. So I just had this observation skill, and I reflect back on one anecdote. When we would be in a train going from Jabalpur to Delhi to my grandparents' place, my mother would give us this little challenge, perhaps just to keep us busy, on can you look up all the stations? Or do you know the names of all the rivers that are coming on your way? So just doing that repeatedly opened up the curiosity and the learning mindset. And we just stuck by it through our career and other journey. In any case, being a software professional, learning has to be your second nature because technology is changing so fast. You're constantly learning, doing deep dives into things. doing reverse engineering. So a lot of that just gets built up over the years.
It's amazing to kind of see how small little things as you practice comes a long way. And when you kind of look back at it, you kind of attribute these are all small little things.
Yes,
Ob-
absolutely.
Observing skills, learning skills. It's not saying that okay, you do all of those things, you get something, but you do for the fun of doing it.
You do for the fun. Yes. The way Indian society is and the way we do parenting, which is very, very hands on. So you just, in this whole effort of teaching your children, you learn one more time. So I think I know more of history and more of geography, not when I was a student, but when I was teaching my children. And that's where my curiosity actually got enhanced even further. And the learning also got enhanced even further. Along the way, financially, if you see, I have made all kinds of financial mistakes. And each mistake kind of taught me and made me more curious to understand what I was doing better and read the fine print, figure out. And I've always been the bold type, never been the one who's shy of asking questions. So that kind of fueled the curiosity mindset.
That's fantastic. So we kind of traversed two paths here. One, we started off with your financial acumen, your interest in the financial sector, and second is a technocrat that you are, and how it has shaped your own journey, your own learning. I'll flick back to the financial element of it, and we'll start off with what you're doing currently, which is Pay It Forward. Tell me and my listeners a bit about Pay It Forward, and has a few queries around that particular piece, but I would want to get you to kind of articulate what Pay It Forward is all about. What was the genesis of this? How did it come into existence?
So Pay It Forward has its own very interesting journey. I actually got full-fledged into investing around 2009. That's when I actually said that, I'm going to take this up as my full time and perhaps not get back to a technical role. And around that time, one of my dear friends and now my partner, Preeta, we were doing a program here in Bangalore where we were using the Economic Times as our textbooks, and it was led by a chapter called Millennium Mams, which is a Calcutta-based organization, which kind of works on economic empowerment for women. So that's where I got more and more involved into the technical conversations around money and understanding those things. So I also found that a lot of women around me were not into the subject. Even if they came with money, they did not really comprehend the subject. So that was quite a leveler, and I felt that I'm not alone. So Pay It Forward was really a series of lot of honest conversation between us and between women trying to understand the subject better. So with my partner, Preeta, we had a similar journey. We were both curious about investing, and we were trying to simplify money for ourselves before simplifying it for others. And my third partner, Vinita, who is a CACFP, she actually worked as a great guide in kind of coming in and helping us understand that without any judgment. So, Pay It Forward really started through these conversations. It's only when we realized this big gap around us. And this was also around the time when my daughter was a teenager. And I was riddled with these fears on how she is going to navigate because I was a late learner of finance, particularly. So, I wanted to transfer this knowledge to her. And we realized that not just her, but there are so many people around us who were not thinking about managing their money. They did not know where to start. So before Pay It Forward became organization, as I said, it was the curiosity and the honest conversations that made us go together and build what is called Pay It Forward. As it stands at Pay It Forward, we aim to make finance and a dining table conversation. We want to simplify, de-jargonize, and help people understand the basic of personal finance and how they can navigate their lives. Because that's an essential tool right now for any of us to survive in this rapidly changing world around us. More so for women, but we are addressing women, youth, peri-retirees, and nearly everybody, all segments of individuals.
That's a great idea. And again, in my experience, I'm sure you can relate to this. Do you think people struggle more with money or with the emotions around money?
It's a little bit of both, but it's more to do with the emotions. So, for example, I would like to take this across life stages. So, for example, for a young person, an early jobber, they are constantly being there's a huge wave of consumerism around us, and they live in the world of instant gratification. So for them, the lack of money is a thing, and they're constantly rolling credit and trying to be equal amongst their peers, and there is this whole peer pressure that they are going through. Although we see this as a behavior, there is a lot of emotional baggage that we are carrying. I mean, it's worth exploring why we want to be an equal, why do we want to fit in, and what are the boundaries that we can draw for ourselves and around us. So, the comparison generation, the generation of social media, they're constantly riddled with wanting to spend. And the industry kind of feeds on them, giving credit easily, making it easier for them, and giving them lucrative offers all around. So that also is happening. But for many of us on the other side, we see that there is an emotional baggage. For example, I also do financial planning. So there was a client who was not able to take on a holiday because she constantly felt she doesn't have enough, or she's got to continuously keep saving. It's only somewhere when we sat down and did the financial plan, she realized that, she did have enough. So she was coming from an emotional space where you're not able to figure out, where you start from a scarcity mindset and you are not able to overcome or reset your mindsets there.
Well, you did make an emphasis on you're helping a lot of women manage their financials, right? And one, why this particular segment of people that you're focusing on? But more importantly, when you had these kind of coaching, mentoring sessions with women, what changes in a woman emotionally once she becomes financially aware? What have you seen in close quarters?
I come to that. I also want to add one thing. So, apart from the stereotypes that are there, whenever we think about money, we think about, there's a lot of fear because, we're not a trusting society. We don't know how things are going to happen. There's a lot of fear of not having enough, of getting cheated. There's a lot of shame. Let's say you have a credit. I mean, you look at the industry around us. If you have a credit card, or if you are in debt, it's kind of a social shame that I'm carrying a debt, right? That's how our environment is. So, and comparison, that leads to a lot of anxiety. Now, for women specifically, I think there is a significant stereotype that we deal with. I'd like to go back a little bit before I answer this question for you, Shrikant. If you see how our kings and queens go back to the era of royals, where we did not have digital currency, we were trading in gold or grain, and both those assets lay with the woman. With the woman, gold in terms of the jewelry, of course, there was treasury, but the household asset was generally the jewelry and the grain. For both of them, the custodian was the woman. And they were very, very empowered people. Women were a very empowered class, even though they were not front facing, but within the family unit, they were really empowered. It's only during the invasions that we saw, if you study history, we saw this change where the woman becomes more vulnerable, and the assets also move away from being only in land and gold and grains to becoming currency. And this is where the woman has really lost out. And we also added a layer of stereotypes saying that, it's the man's role to look after the money, the woman's role to look after the kids and the kitchen. And so whenever we see a woman trying to come out of those shackles, it's a lot of social conditioning. It's not easy for her either to do it, because she's also coming out of the same social conditioning, and so is the man. So we find that that's something that they struggle with quite a lot before coming out to participate. And the confidence or financial confidence or any kind of confidence actually comes only from participation. So when we have these conversations, coming to your question on how it kind of like, changes once the woman becomes financially aware, we see this big shift from feeling dependent to participating to feeling independent. If you look around us even now, we are definitely bridging the pay gap and the percentage of women who are working. But even amongst them, how many of them are really managing their money? We want to become an equal, but we need to take ownership of what we are earning as well. So we are becoming equal in terms of earning, but not equal in terms of ownership. And therefore, we're seeing a lot of women don't have the financial confidence to take charge of what they want to do. For example, I know of cases where women have stayed on in those roles way beyond they have enjoyed or felt peaceful or felt recognized. They stay on in jobs that have outgrown their competency. They accept lower pay. And they have this fear about the future constantly. The conversations on women and financial confidence, I've seen a lot of transition happen in these areas.
And this is also more of a human psyche as well. As much as it's true for women, it is also true for the male community. And you made a very pertinent point. It is A, to be seen as equal, B, to take ownership, have the confidence, and then finally that confidence results in you kind of making those decisions, right?
Yeah.
So having worked with a whole lot of people, what anecdotes, what stories can you kind of share about women folks having that confidence, changing the trajectory either of their own careers or of their families?
Oh, I have a bag full of stories. But let me take on two. So the first one is of a young girl. She was in her late 20s and the first time earner from her village. So, the first time worker, she had moved to Bangalore and she started earning. And she was constantly sending her money back home. And there was a big demand on her to raise a loan. She was feeling uncertain about herself. And when she spoke to me, she wanted to, raise a loan for buying a bike for her brother, who was still in grade 10 and had a fancy for a bike. So we had a deeper conversation on whether she should be responsible for that loan and whether the bike was really required. And along the way, she realized that it was not a necessity for the family. And she mustered the courage to step up and refuse taking that loan. The two good things that happen is her awareness towards where her money is being spent. The second was a conversation on what she is going to do with that money. So she had a lot of aspirations on how she wants to use the money, upskill herself, do take her parents out on a pilgrimage, buy a fridge for their home, which were all very, very human aspirations to be. And at the same time, she wanted to feel safe and secure. So that was a big transformational story. And surprisingly, Middle India, who really needs financial education more than anyone else, is the one who gets left out. Because if you see the financial industry who's selling us all the products, they have their tough targets and they're all constantly, most of it is chasing HNIs and the ultra rich. And similarly, the products are also designed for that. I'm so glad we have a good regulator who's taking charge of these things, but we need more and more education at the Middle India and Lower India segments there. So
Nice.
I'll have a lot of stories along the way.
And to round up the conversation around pay forward, what's the big vision of pay it forward?
So our vision is to make personal finance, have every home at least one person equipped with knowledge on what is personal finance, look at personal finance as a 360-degree conversation, and make conversations about money mainstay and everyday dining table conversations. We've seen a wave in the last decade, we've seen health as a big wave. And it's not surprising to find people discussing health openly or talking about what is the right food to eat, what's the right exercise to do. I would love to see those conversations about money, on what is the right investment behavior, how should I plan budgeting, and what would be the next lead to do. We are really in a good space with India growing and with the economy growing. The large population of India has a potential to grow rich, and I'd love to be part of that journey.
Wonderful. Make money conversations, dinner conversations. That's
Yeah.
the message out there.
Yes, absolutely. And specifically for women, since you asked, equal rights, equal responsibilities. If we want men in our kitchens, we should be willing to go and check out what mutual fund to buy or go to the bank.
How did all of this journey unfold? At any point of time, did you feel that this is messy?
Of course, the career makes much more sense in hindsight than when I was living it. Or rather, while I'm living it, I'm sure there will be many decisions to come that I'm not too sure how it will be. But for sure, it was messy. There were moments of confusion, there were moments of uncertainty, moments of not feeling confident on myself. So I deeply value where I am today, learning alongside everyone. What happened, if I reflect back and try and create a flow chart, was that technology kind of gave me a systems thinking and an analytical approach. I used the pauses to either give back or reskill. So some of my give backs have been like teaching children on how to use computers. So I'm a teacher's daughter, so I've always been a teacher. So I've been you give me a subject to teach, and I will. It's like I love the idea of sharing knowledge. Then when I got into investing, it demanded a lot of patience because it was a new subject, and investing in itself is there's so much of ups and downs. So the patience that came in, the resilience that grew, entrepreneurship actually made me far more resilient, far more vocal about what I want. My ability to say no and take no for an answer, both importantly. And along the way, I think the tools that really worked for me were empathy. Clarity is something that comes only later. But yeah, this is how I kind of feel that it was really, yes, it was very messy. Sometimes it gets lonely. Sometimes you just wish you could pull your hair out and restart.
I love what you said. Clarity will only happen later. And in the times that we are in, we were so obsessed saying that you need to have a roadmap, you need to have a goal, and then you need to work towards it. Now, here comes a technology that's turning everything upside down. And for somebody who has kind of lived that life without being dictated by the world, of not having that roadmap, not getting fixated with what is happening, but go with the flow. What's your take on what's happening in the world today? What would be your 2 cents of advice for all the listeners?
A portfolio life is going to be the reality for many modern careers. We are often, we are expecting life to move in a very neat, linear direction, but real growth does not happen there. Real growth actually happens through transition, uncertainty, and reinventing your own self. I mean, we are seeing the wave of AI, and I'm sure you're referring to that, but we call it the VUCA world. And now the new term Bani, because we've got to constantly look at things what are around us. And there are two tools, I think, which will help anyone who wants to navigate this. One is having relational intelligence. So when you enter a room, what is happening in the room? Who are the right people to talk to? And just having a sense of what the dynamics that are playing out. And two is our agility in learning and reinventing. So change is going to be a constant. True value or true growth will happen only when we embrace change and embrace learnability. And those have been my tools all along.
And I know, did it ever feel in this journey that you had in your career trajectory that you had, that you had starts, you had pauses, then you started something, And it's very natural to kind of compare yourself to saying that my batchmates, my schoolmates, they had a different trajectory. They're way ahead of some might be in a different career stream altogether. That comparison, saying that
Yeah.
am I left behind? Am I in the right direction? Did it occur to you at all?
Yes, it did. I'll tell you when. So, the initial years, of course, the first 2 decades, I was pretty disconnected with my batchmates. We were not so much on Facebook or WhatsApp or anything. It's only in around, 2011, 12 when WhatsApp and Facebook became more popular and we all got connected and rebonded and everyone wanted to know what each other was doing. I did go through a big pang of feeling left out. But I also realized that I was in a very unique place and my learning and my career was very different. So, a career is not just about money, it's about the experiences that you've gathered through your life. And I had the good fortune of moving so many homes, making friends along the way, and also gathering experiences and learning. So I can follow 4 languages, and I cook different kinds of cuisines. So, the adaptability that came in was very different from what I was seeing in some of my other friends who led a linear career. In any case, if you see, for a woman, this is something that I experienced. Change is a constant, you have 3 things to take care of. I call it the 3 M's. Marriage. So I had change because of marriage. We had moved. Motherhood. So every time there's motherhood, there is a pause. And in our case, movement. So because we relocated places. All these 3 were really disruptions which I had to deal with. And it was a conscious choice on which of us is going to do that. And since I knew that I would be taking a biological break because of motherhood, I was very happy giving this away. One thing I always knew is that, I will get back. I didn't realize that I would get back in the different shape or form, but I always felt that I will get back. And so this is something very interesting. Professor Vasanti from IMB brought it out in a beautiful way to me. Careers traditionally have been like a ladder, right? They're evenly paced and it's a more linear structure. But for women and people like me who've had portfolio careers, it's more like a dangling rope. So, the ladder is more like a rope, the one that you hang out of an aeroplane to save someone, which is going to be moving all around and it's going to be a curvy road. But ladder, it'll be a rope ladder and we would be climbing and moving and shaking. It may take a little bit longer, but we will all get there and the experiences along the way will make it very different. And
Yes,
that's where it brought me peace that, where I hold myself and the kind of experiences I may have are very different from the experience from some of my peers. And no longer comparing, feeling very, very confident about myself and the place where I am, both financially as well as career wise. Yes.
so if life is truly a portfolio, what are people under investing today?
Okay. I kind of preempted this question. I've been thinking about it. We are under investing in relation. Of course, we are under investing in finance. We are under investing in knowledge. We are under investing in relationships and health. Those are the areas that we as a community, as an individual, need to take charge of. And we are over optimizing this, the productivity part that you need to be productive every minute of your day. And we are under investing in the peace that comes from reflection, that comes from sitting with your thoughts and allowing yourself to process what is happening in life.
Or then just move. Lovely. And Anu, as you have kind of traversed in your career, you have also now taken on a very interesting and a significant role, a leadership role, which is with CII, particularly for the Indian Women Network. Tell us, how did you land into this role? You had a busy career, you had a busy life, and yet you wanted to do something for the community. You picked up this leadership role. How did you land into this role? And what's this opportunity all about?
So it was pretty much a segue from Pay It Forward. I actually joined India Women Network thinking that this would be a business network which will give me business and I would be able to make more business connections. So that's how I landed there. But along the way, I realized that leadership emerges more organically. And I found myself really aligned in this network with the women's growth and inclusion agenda that they have. So we run a lot of programs on for professional women and individuals and entrepreneurs to bring them up to speed. There's a lot of collaboration and contribution through participation that's happening at India Women Network. Um, there are three aspects where there is work along policy and gender parity. There is work along uplifting each other. But most importantly, it's a community where you can see growth happening. Usually, when you join a network or you think about a network, there are people pulling each other down. But here, this is a network where I'm finding that everyone's finding something positive about the other person. So it's a very, very energizing space and very, very growth oriented. Now, on the leadership part, I didn't really pitch for this position in any which way. It was just about, it's just in my nature to meet people and remember what they do, just creating opportunities for each other and building a space more as leadership as a service, not as a status. I just want to leave a impact in enabling anyone, even if it's one person, if I can enable their journey and make it better for them, whether through conversations or through helping them skill better, it would be very fulfilling.
And what has leadership taught to you beyond personal success?
So, what is leadership? Isn't it about enabling others and making more leaders? I mean, if you can create a process or a system which can run without you, that's the best a leader can do.
Leader create more leaders.
Yes, a leader creating more leaders, just pulling each other along and ensuring that it's collective growth. Leadership cannot be an individual growth. It's more about a collective growth to me.
Very well said. And it's a Ubuntu leadership that the African leadership follows is I am because we are.
Yes.
Right? And leadership is all about that.
Yes. Ubuntu.
Ubuntu. Anu, you have had your career where you have worked in different organizations in some great brands, World Bank, ISRO, Wipro, to talk of a few. If you were to do a compare contrast of what leadership means to you now versus what it was then at that time of your career, what comes out clearly at this point of time saying that, okay, this is what it is. This is what my learning was.
So I've been somebody who was really starstruck with, businesses and understanding businesses and all these leaders. I thought in my early career, and which is the era that you're referring to when I was in these software firms, building systems, I think leadership was more about performance and expertise. So I recollect someone I used to look up to. She was an expert on time management, an expert on delegation, an expert on, she knew the subject so well. And that's what I would look up to from her. But subtly, and I think this matters to me now much more than it did then, was her ability to empathize with us, to include us in her conversations, and not judge if we didn't know the answer. Those are the three things that are hitting out to me. And for me now, it is more about building others than proving myself. I'm who I am. If I can help build others, that's what leadership means for me, to create space for others.
Oh, beautifully put. I think in the industry terms, we call it as hard skills and soft skills. If you see the transition that has happened, the transition has happened more to the softer skills, while that is the harder skills to kind of have. Empathy, we call it a soft skill, but that's the hardest to develop.
It's the hardest to develop, absolutely. And when earlier we used to go to leaders for answers, now we go to Chat GPT for answers. We go to leaders for understanding and their ability to help us navigate through the upheavals and the balance that needs to come. The challenges of the intrapersonal scale that comes in is what we need to balance out. So it's a very interesting space because at India Women Network, nearly everyone comes with credible experience. We are all volunteers, not tied together by power or hierarchy of belonging to an organization. When you belong to an organization, there's always an unsaid line of a peer, subordinate, or superior. And that kind of enables you to work together. Now, when you in a volunteer network like this, we are all leading through our influence. Every decision that you do, I can't just tell anyone to do anything. Even if I tell, they're not bound to do it. It's only through influence that you can make things work. So that's a different kind of leadership trait that I'm right now working on and trying to develop on how to lead through influence and how to build this community further.
Oh, nice. Leading by influence. So if the folks at CI are listening to this conversation, Anu, what is that one thing that they don't know about Anu? Or what is that one thing that world doesn't know about Anu that Anu knows?
There would be many. I'm pretty much an open book, so people know me well. But yeah, I'm somebody who loves to contribute before titles. And I love to cook. I love to cook. I love to embroider. I'm still very, very in touch with earth on many things.
As we get closer to wrap up, there are few things that warrant some reflection given the rich life and career journey that you have had. And if I were to ask you, what has compounded the most in your life, financially or otherwise?
I think relationship and friends. That's compounded the most. And hopefully trust.
What does a rich life mean to you now?
The liberty. So a rich life would be, there are many ways of defining this. For me, it is the freedom to do what I want to do and find purposeful to do, which means that I should be healthy, which means I should have a control on my time, which means I should have financial resources to do it, and which also means me knowing myself better. So doing my own KYC and finding what my value system is and aligning my work to that. That's what would make it a very rich life. If I could get to bed and sleep and say, okay, it was a good day and I did something good for someone.
Live a rich life. It's those small little things is what matters, isn't it?
It's always the small little things. Like, if you walk on a street and there's a lake where I stay and there is one old lady, every time I step out, she gives me a hug. And I don't know her at all, except that she's the auntie. I don't even know her name. And I think it brings a smile and warm joy to me that, I get her blessings every day. And that makes my life so much more richer.
So true. Only if someone listening feels stuck around career, money, or life decisions, what is the first honest step that they should take?
First thing is to pause. Pause. Take a day off. Sit with yourself. Write down what is bothering you and be aware of what those issues are. If it is something to do with the career, you need to examine what. I mean, is it a person? Is it the kind of work? What is it? And start making changes in small steps. Financially, it's very simple. Most of us do not know what we are doing financially. I think if we were to just list down what we are doing financially, you will be surprised at the rich information you will get back, and you will automatically know what you need to do. It's the small, consistent actions that matter, and confidence will come only after that action. They say, not fake it till you make it. So you just need to do those small changes and stay anchored in that discipline for a while.
Anchored in that discipline.
Yeah.
And if somebody were to kind of pick up a micro experiment to do, say, over the next 90 days, if all the listeners were to kind of pick a task, pick an activity and start working on that, what would that one micro experiment that you'd recommend people to do?
Okay, since I come from the financial field and I do suggest this, is that every day if you can just write down where you are spending or make a note of where you are spending what you are spending just for 90 days, you will be surprised how you will be a changed person.
That's a wonderful recommendation. In building a portfolio life, having a healthy financial life is equally important than just career, health, or other elements, other dimensions of portfolio life. So here you go, my dear listeners, and wonderful experiment to capture your daily spends for the next 90 days for each one of you to know how your financial life, financial trajectory is heading.
Absolutely. A healthy portfolio or a healthy portfolio life begins with having financial confidence and knowing what you're doing, why you're doing, and finding the right purpose which is aligned to you.
That's a full circle moment, Anu, isn't it? We started off with that and we are kind of wrapping up our conversation with that. And this show is all about creating ripples of inspiration. Before you and I sign off, what's your Inspire Someone Today message to all the listeners?
Your goal isn't perfection. Your goal is participation. So participate, enjoy your journey, enjoy changes that life is throwing at you, and just navigate it one step at a time.
Goal is not perfection, but participation. On that note, Anu, thank you so much for taking time and sharing your portfolio life with all of us out here. Really appreciate your wonderful journey and your words of wisdom to all of us. Thank you for spending this time with us. Conversations like this remind us that growth doesn't always come from answers. It often comes from better questions. Inspire Someone Today began with the belief that each of us has the power to make a difference. Not through grand gestures, but through everyday choices. That belief still holds, now with a little more depth and a lot more listening. If something from today's episode stayed with you, carry it forward, share it, sit with it, or explore it further through the IST community or the book Inspire Someone Today. Until we meet again, stay curious, keep inspiring, and inspire someone today.